Guys, it's Chris Warren right here, aka Japanarcho-Communist, and we're here with one and only Brent Lengel right now. You guys don't you don't need an introduction. You guys know who the hell we are. So thanks.
Yeah.
How you doing, Brent?
I'm doing really good. I just finished an awesome stream with Bobby of CvL with a 5x5 now Mustache Mafia podcast. We talked about Adorno and how the culture industry essentially gave us Trump and is set to continue to bring psychopaths and sociopaths and put them into power. So, light stuff. But we talked about that.
Real family-friendly, nice stuff that we could just discuss with anyone. Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did want to get this out at the beginning of the stream, by the way, just in case somebody didn't catch this the last time. My comic book series, Snow White Zombie Apocalypse. We are about to kick off our Kickstarter fundraising for the third issue. And I think you followed us ahead of time, correct?
Yeah.
So if folks, I'm going to put this into the chat here, but if folks have not already, please go and click to follow that ahead of time, because it really helps with the site's algorithm. Even if you don't want the comic or don't like it or anything or think I'm horrible, still follow it. and that will trick the robots into thinking that I'm awesome.
All right. Yeah, so basically, like I said, with this whole thing that we were planning was just sort of just talk about whatever stuff. We had stuff that let me actually look at my phone, because I had written down specific things that we were supposed to talk about last time that we didn't have time to cover with my sister, who is supposed to join us on this podcast, but I have no idea if she's going to. But
we'll figure it out. By the way, just so that because I do know some members of my audience are here. For those of you guys who do not know, I have known this is. Do you want me to call you by your name or
just Chris? That's fine. Yeah, just call me by Chris.
This is Chris, Japan anarcho-communist. He started a Food Not Bombs in Japan, which is super cool. But
something we have to mention every 30 seconds.
Yeah. And I've known you for years. You've been a really fun guy to have in the chat, and you also just have a great kind of explosive personality. So it's always fun to have you around. So I think this is the first time you and I have talked face to face, though.
Yeah, this is the first time, other than just bullshitting together in CvL and all that stuff, and everybody else. But yeah, this is the first time we've actually had that. We've talked about it for forever, but we never had a chance to and stuff like that. But I mean, I get it. You're busy as hell. Plus, I live on the other side of the planet, 13-hour difference. It's a little bit hard.
You're very lucky that my writing partner destroyed my. I was already a night owl, and then my writing partner, because he's a rock star, keeps the band The Cruise Shadows. He keeps,
okay.
Yeah, he keeps Rockstar hours. So to write together, I would have to stay up till dawn to work with him. And now my internal clock is set to that. And I see the sun coming up and I'm like, well, it's time to go to bed. So, I'm up and raring to go. This is noon for you?
It's 2:20 in the afternoon right now for me over there.
So this is actually my fault. I did the math wrong because I was told you were 12 hours ahead of me, and I was like, oh, well, if you're 12 hours ahead of me, if it's your noon plus 12, that's my midnight.
I mean, it's fine. A lot of people screw up the time thing, so I'm not going to be God damn it, Brent, how could you? This is dude, nobody lives in Japan. Come on, bro. So, it's fine, man. So, no biggie.
Yeah, is your sister? Is she also in Japan, or?
Oh no, she lives back in the States and stuff. So right now, that's so I mean, I'm used to having the time difference anyway from her, because she lives in Wisconsin and stuff like that. So just a 13-hour difference from them and stuff. I think yours is roughly a 12. Actually.
Yeah, I'm on Eastern time in New York.
Yeah. So yeah, but no, so she's a little bit ahead of us, but I don't know, maybe she just got sidetracked or something else. She's got like 2 kids and everything else to do, so whatever, shit happens.
2 kids, plus it's Wisconsin, maybe somebody ate her.
she got assaulted by cows or some shit like that.
Well, that was I had a roommate my first year in New York. I had a roommate who was from Wisconsin. That was the first thing he said. He's like, "Yeah, come to Wisconsin, we'll eat you," because they've got like Jeffrey Dahmer and a number of other
Dahmer, Ed Gein. Actually, crazy story. Actually, yeah, because Ed Gein and stuff like that. My dad actually met him. Like dead serious. So years ago, as a med student, he was had to go to learn about like human psychology and stuff like that, and they took him to basically like a mental institution. And at the time he was there, like he had some old squirrely ass dude come up to him, just start talking to him about whatever and stuff like that. He's just like, "Oh, okay, that's that's kind of cool, whatever." Just like let it go. And then one of the nurses was there. It's like, "Ah, so you met Eddie, right?" He's like, "Ed Gein?" He's like, "Yep, that's him." So he's like, "Oh shit."
I'm a little starstruck. Which one was he? Which was Ed Gein? Was he the one that collected the women's shoes?
Yeah, he was the dude that like shot 2 people and like dug up basically body parts, like sewed suits out of him and stuff. He was like the inspiration for like Leatherface and like the whole like Buffalo Bill and like a whole lot of other guys. Although in reality he was way more timid than the movies try to make him out to be and stuff. But yeah, that was the guy. So it's just like, he must have been a fun little experience for you. He's like, yeah, it was awesome. So
yeah, I love this. So I assure you to my followers, we will not be talking about Wisconsin serial killers.
Yeah.
I'm just being racist or statist.
Brent, fucking canceled.
Oh, just wait. BreadTube is apparently melting down, so who knows.
No, so today actually, so for the topics we had, like there's let me bring it up. I got on my list here on my notepad function here on my shitty fucking. Okay. So the ones that we didn't discuss before, let's see, they had education reform, infrastructure under anarchism, labor camps in Catalonia, and then the big one that I was thinking that was probably more pertinent now to a lot of audience members, I think, would be what the left needs to do now that Biden won, and what that means for like leftists. Now, I personally think that's a better one to go start off than anything else real quick. And stuff.
That sounds good. Yeah. I wish, I don't know if you sent this out beforehand, because I could have, I've actually like really deeply studied the Catalan anarchists because I wrote a screenplay about them. So if I'd known ahead of time, I really could have grabbed my books and jumped into that. But yeah, let's do Biden first. But since you've said labor camps in Catalonia, we'll have to talk about that.
We'll have to. I mean, you're probably well more informed about that than I am, to be honest. Like, I know some bits about that kind of stuff, but like, to be honest, like my major areas that I know for like expertise and stuff with anarchism, it's like I know some of that, but since I live here in Japan, I know more about the history of stuff in Japan and stuff. So Catalonia stuff, I couldn't really tell you much, but guys like Sakai Osaki or like Noe Ito or like the whole labor movements around here during that stuff like that I could fucking like prattle on for 30 fucking years and stuff like that. But like,
yeah, I mean, so I'll tell you what,
yeah.
we'll start with something new and something old, because it's Biden and he's basically a corpse, and then we'll go to something even older. So what the left needs to do now that Biden has been elected president. So what's your feeling on this?
Okay, so actually, here I was thinking that like with this election, realistically speaking, either if Trump had won or if Biden had won, it would have been difficult for leftists, period, but I'll bet for completely different reasons. So Trump lost, but had he won, I think it would have been a short-term victory for us, in that the fact that the Democrats at that point would have been kind of fucked. They couldn't have been away and said like, hey, vote harder, we'll win. Because at that point, that would have been like blatant proof, obviously you failed. And that would have drawn more people to the left at that point. But it would have been crushed hardcore with Trump just coming down even harder onto it. So it would have been
and he already had people black bagging folks on the West Coast and stuff. So yeah, I think the victory of fascism like needed to be stopped in that sense. Like I said this, I got contacted by Modern Day Debate, and one of the debates they had me do was they were like, we want you to debate Trump versus Biden. And I'm like, oh God, are you really going to make me do this? And they're like, do you want to do it? I'm like, yes. And so I came in and I made the case that you should vote against Trump, even though Biden is hot garbage, because Trump has made himself essentially above the law. And if I think that we should probably not have a president. And if we do have a president, we should maybe not make them above the law. But the absolute very last stopgap of liberal democracy is literally liberal democracy. And if Trump had won after all the illegal stuff he did, that really, I mean, that's pretty much the end of the experiment. And it leaves only revolution, which, some people might think, accelerationism, let's do it. But I will say never go full accelerationist. And also, people seem to have this idea about revolutions that they happen because people get beaten and beaten and beaten, and eventually the straw breaks the camel's back and you have a revolution. Historically, that's not how it happens. Revolutions historically happen, the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, all of them, they come not as things go from bad to worse, but as it's bad, there's an uptick, people get a taste of the good life, and then there's suddenly a sharp, fast downturn. That is what creates revolutionary movements, because people have had a taste of what could be better. It builds their hope. When things are just awful and they go from bad to worse, it breaks their spirit, and people just go, I guess I'm going to deal with it. So yeah, you will never you will never get a actual revolution by following at least the stupid meme version of accelerationism. I know there's probably a philosophical version of accelerationism that's a little more that's a little more
in depth.
Yeah. But there's probably more to it. I haven't looked into it enough to know, but I have looked enough into the memeified version of it. And the version that most people are talking about when they say we want conservative victories to cause a revolution. That's mindless and idiotic.
Yeah, and another thing too that I think a lot of people that are like really big into we'll get the revolution thing is like most successful revolutions also had way more outside help than most people are willing to admit, and that's just the truth. Usually through foreign intervention of some sort out there.
Yeah, and when they didn't have foreign intervention, they kind of failed. I mean, that's what screwed the Catalan anarchists. I've gone over, and we can talk about this when we get to Anarchist Catalonia, but I've actually gone through and after doing all of the research on the Catalan anarchists and on the revolution, because you naturally want to be like, how could they have won? And what I came to, the conclusion I came to was there was literally only one option for winning. And it was the option that almost no one would have chosen at the time, which was an immediate, after they defeated the fascists in Barcelona, they could not slow down. They had to immediately march south, engage the fascists in a battle, enter their territory, and take the factories that created the arms and munitions in the south. If they had been able to do that, and I don't know if they would have been able to do that, they could have stood a chance winning because they would have had access to, tanks, airplanes, just basic weapons and bullets. But because they didn't do that, they had to take either what was saved or scrounged or what they got when they took over the city of Barcelona. None of that would have happened because no other power would sell them weapons or give them weapons. The Western powers preferred the fascists to the anarchists, and the Soviets did give them weapons in exchange for all of the gold, but not to the anarchists. They kept them only to parties that were, more favorable to the Soviets, and then promptly lost the war. So, again, international support is so key. And that's actually why I was so excited when the United States backed the Kurds, including the PKK YPG.
Well, yeah, I agree. Because I actually have friends that joined the PYD, and they'll tell you straight up, they weren't wild about the U.S. being there because they knew why the U.S. was there and stuff like that. But they will admit, had they not done it, there's no way they could have survived, especially if we're talking Kobani. One thing that kills me about a lot of these guys that are just like, oh, they accepted air raids and everything like that. Kobani was never, ever meant to be a success. It was a last-minute stand where they fully expected to get wiped out by ISIS. Yeah. We're going to hold off them off as long as we can until like the women and children or whatever can escape to the mountains and hopefully be okay. They fully expected to die until the U.S. came in and said, actually, hey, if you want, we can start air bombing the hell out of these guys, and you guys can have a chance. And of course, at that point, it's like, of course they're going to say yes.
Yeah.
Like, what are they going to do? Sorry, my ideological purity says no. Sorry, it's okay. I'll just go ahead and die and still have the rest of our people suffer a genocide. It's what the left, in the West.
It's what the left wants.
It's what the tankies would have wanted to fucking happen. Like, get the fuck out of here. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, this is the thing. Like, and I know we're kind of off topic here, but like, when Trump was another thing, and I actually did mention that in my debate, when Trump betrayed the Kurds for no reason and just let Erdogan start bombing the crap out of them, I was just like, oh, like that was another reason why, for personal reasons, I wanted him out of power. So I feel like, now that Biden has won, there are two big things. One is, I think we need to be on the lookout for Trump tried his soft coup that he had been, hinting at and then when he realized that his people were incompetent because he's an idiot and all the people around him are idiots and he just failed up, and that none of the lawsuits that he filed, except for one, had any chance of making it to the Supreme Court. And the only one that had a chance of making it to the Supreme Court wouldn't change the outcome. He then went for like what looks to be a hard coup, where he's begun firing, he fired the
military leaders and all that stuff.
Yeah, to try to replace them with his people, which I don't think is going to work. Because he already pissed off the military by stealing their budget to build his stupid wall. And like, even like back, what was it with when Black Lives Matter and the Bo of the Fifth Column did a great video on this, where he was talking about how what was it, the sergeant major of the army, like the single most high up enlisted. Yeah, he like used the phrase like "listen up," which was a really big deal with regard to that subculture, and said that they had a problem in the military, with racism essentially and with white nationalists, and that pretty much seemed to make the Army's position clear, and by extension, along with stuff said by other generals, the rest of the military, that they're not going to swing with this far right fascist Trump crap. At least most of them won't. I mean, I know you had some experience in the armed forces, so you may have a better look into that. So.
Well, no, I think it is kind of important that they actually took a stand and did that kind of crap. And I'm kind of amazed they did, because typically speaking in the military, most people generally operate off of just fear of reprisal in the service. That's honest to God the truth and stuff like that. Like a lot of people, like it's like, I think a lot of people have this like faith in the military that, when the right thing happens, when the right situation comes, or like something's wrong, the military will take a clear-cut stand against that. And I can tell you from personal experience of seeing what the shit happened out there, that is absolutely not the fucking case. There's a lot of stuff, even on like low-level crap, that people are willing to like sweep under the rug and stuff, because if they speak out, like basically they're just going to get punished. And the way that the military's really insular chain of command system and punishment thing works, they're really good at keeping a lot of that crap under wraps and stuff. So when I heard that about the sergeant actually speaking up and saying something, I'm just like, holy shit, that took balls, kind of a thing.
Well, especially because if I'm not mistaken with the military, now I was never in the military, but I do come from a military family. My dad was in 04 in the Navy. But like, the military has a culture where like there's a reason why we don't have military coups in the United States, and it seems like it has a culture of staying as apolitical as possible for obvious reasons. So the fact that they did actually come out and make that, I mean, I feel like Trump kind of forced them into that position. Was that your feeling on that? Or
I think he tried to kind of forced it into it too. And I do agree with you with that assessment too. Like, honestly, if you really wanted to get a better way to go ahead and get a military coup, there are ways to do it, but Trump just doesn't have the brains to do it. Because I can tell you exactly how the fuck you would actually get a good military coup. And a lot of people think this is stupid, but I can speak of this due to just personal experience that I had in the service. If you really wanted to get somewhere with the military and get a coup and stuff, you need bribes. And you need to bribe high up people. And people are going to ask, like, how do you know that's possible? And I can tell you, My ship, the USS Blue Ridge, my CEO was personally involved in the biggest Navy corruption scandal in the history of the Navy. It was called the it was called the Fat Leonard scandal. So I'll give you guys the too long didn't read thing. A Malaysian military contractor that everybody knew by the name of Fat Leonard went ahead and bribed high-ranking military officials to give away our ship's movements in exchange for like money, prostitutes, just anything. And what he would do is he would use that the information to get his company into these ports. They would use his service, and he would overcharge the military by just a shit ton of cash. And he had been doing this for years, and he just finally got busted on this stuff. And like the whole scope of the situation was just like insane. It's funny too, because my CEO, right? One of the things he got bribed with was cigars, right? Among many things that he had, right? And he's trying to say, I never actually had that stuff, but that's bullshit because I was on watch as a lookout when he was smoking the goddamn things and handing those cigars out to everyone else. It's like, I saw you red-handed with the goddamn evidence, asshole. Like, shut the fuck up. Like, yeah, dude.
Man. Well, it's funny because we just had Bobby, you know, and he's military, former military. He was, I believe, Army, and he was deployed in Afghanistan, I think, twice. But like he's always smoking a cigar, like when he's on stream with us. So okay, wow, I love that the guy's name is Fat Leonard. Because like I'm a writer, and if I wrote like a military scandal story and I named the guy Fat Leonard, people would be like, "You SJW cuck, writing this hatchet job on the military. You named him Fat Leonard. What's wrong with you?
You soyed out beta cuck." But it's just like, homeboy, that's based off a real fucking incident. Like, okay there, guys. Yeah.
Truth is stranger than fiction. It's funny, actually, because my screenplay on the life of Buenaventura Durruti, famous anarchist and kind of the anarchist Che Guevara, there's a moment in the script where I have some people that get caught making bombs in their apartment by the Guardia Civil, and they escape out the back window on like a rope made of bed sheets. And in the thing, they escape in a rope made of bed sheets and hide in a graveyard with a gravedigger saying like, yeah, the gravediggers have a union too, and the best place to hide is among the dead. They don't speak. And like these producers approached me about it. And even later on in the script, I actually have like when he's confronted by the fascists and they're like, they've captured him and they're like, you escaped out on a rope made of bed sheets. He's like, bed sheets? That's ridiculous. The thing is, that's true. Like that is based on a real incident where the anarchist bomb makers did escape out the back on a rope made of bed sheets and did hide in a freaking graveyard. So, you know, truth is stranger than fiction. We have a comment, by the way, from Thunderbird. Republicans tried a fascist coup against FDR. Yes, they did. It is called The Business Plot. You can look this up. And I've talked about this a number of times because it's fascinating. They took a retired General Smedley Butler, and there were a number of American troops that were camped out Occupy Wall Street style called the Bonus Army, demanding to be paid this bonus that they were owed. And one of the richest lieutenants who was tied to the Bush family, wow. Yeah, and also like he was conspiring with like the DuPonts and like all of these, just the richest of the rich families. They went up to Smedley Butler and said, we want you to lead this bonus army and overthrow FDR and become the new fascist dictator of the fascist United States. And Smedley Butler was like, okay, yeah, I'll get right on that. And then immediately went to Congress and was like, hey, these guys tried to overthrow the nation. And Congress, and this is actually why I think Trump is probably going to get away with this, despite all the law breaking. Congress looked into it and determined that there was a credible threat, that it was a real plot, and then punished no one. No one went to jail. No one got a slap on this. No one even got a fine, because in America, we do not punish rich people.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Well, I mean, I don't even think it's just like America, though. Even here in Japan, like there's so so many people that should have been punished and stuff like that, but they're painfully rich too. Also, they have ties to the Yakuza, so that really helps.
Well,
too,
nobody wants to get killed with a katana by a guy tattooed head to toe.
well, I mean, I could get into a whole fucking separate spiel about like how influential and like ridiculously powerful, politically speaking, the Yakuza are, but stuff. But that's getting a bit off topic. That's for a different story altogether.
So let's. Yes. So let's keep this on topic with Biden. How does the left respond? So continue.
So here's my thing though and stuff. Like while I was talking, I already discussed from my opinion what I thought would have happened if Trump won, of the difficulties doing. Now with Biden, however, stuff the left still has difficulties, but it's going to be a different situation and stuff. Now Trump. Here's the thing. Biden, now that he's won, they've essentially proven that they don't have to cater to progressives or anybody on the left. And they were saying that they didn't have to do that to the years because most of the people that they had to deal with were in the in the House or anything like that was just other Republicans. So like progressives, we didn't really have any power or anything like that or anything left of that. But at this point, they basically pointed out that if they can stoke enough fears, they can put out the shittiest candidate out there that they personally want, and people are going to vote for them and stuff. So as such, that presents a unique challenge for us because at this point, it's like, well, electoral politics are largely just fucking useless. Yeah. So what I think is we need to do as a left and stuff is instead of trying to worry about that stuff, is start focusing on like just attacking that whole system in the first place, because the way I'm looking
direct action, agitation,
direct action, agitation, and there's other things too, because it's just like, well, they say, oh, we beat Trump, but I'm just saying, why do you have a system that allowed a person like him to get in power in the first place? Or or even other things, because they're talking about like, oh, well, we had to beat him because Roe versus Wade could have got overturned, and I'm just like, aren't you guys just a little bit sick and tired of having a system where basic human rights are like up for debate?
Yeah, and on the chopping block.
And like,
I will mention something, by the way, just on the Roe v. Wade, not to jump down a rabbit hole there. I don't think Roe v. Wade will be overturned. And even if Trump had won, I don't think Roe v. Wade would have been overturned. And I'll tell you why. First off, Trump doesn't care about like that man has paid for more abortions in his life, I guarantee you, than most people have had children. The thing is that Roe v. Wade is more useful to the right as a wedge issue, so that they can go to their base and say, vote for us. You've got to vote for us. Think of the babies that are dying. And that is way more useful to them than, hey, we saved the babies. Because again, a lot of these people will be like, oh, you saved the babies. Okay. Now we don't need to vote for the vapid reality star because the babies are safe. And you would hear this out of so many people on the right. They were saying essentially, oh, we got to let Kavanaugh in despite the fact that he's, allegedly a rapist and a drunk. We got to get this other crazy Opus Dei woman or whatever in regardless of any reason. We got to put her in there for life to save the babies. Nothing else matters but saving the babies. And it's that desperation that they will never give up. And that's why I don't think Roe v. Wade will ever be overturned.
I think you're kind of right on that, because one thing of fascism that always like one of those like characteristics that a lot of like experts on the thing have always talked about is just this like constant fear of something happening and stuff. They need an other to do that and stuff like that. If it hadn't been Roe v. Wade, it could have been anything else. I mean, look at the QAnon crowd, for fuck's sakes. Like, as he's rolling your eyes, like, oh boy, we're not going to open that can of worms.
No, we can open it. I've the thing is I've been listening to the QAnon Anonymous podcast, which I love, because one of the guys on it writes fiction based around like he'll do like a QAnon, like when they were talking about the mole children under New York City. One of the guys who did that podcast, he wrote fiction where it was like all of the people like Sebastian Gorka and stuff who supported Donald Trump, but they're the Ninja Turtles living underneath New York City as like the mutated mole children. His fiction is genuinely good. Like I'm a writer, I can say that it's good writing and it's really funny. So I started following that podcast, but also like, I listened to a speech by Jim Watkins tonight, and it's that man is out of his damn mind, and like you can even hear it, and you can hear how disturbed he is in just the cadence of his voice.
One of those kind of deals. Okay.
Like if you've ever listened to L. Ron Hubbard sing, like it's that kind of insanity.
The second you just hear the tone, you're like, oh, okay, we need to go through we need to do a little bit more than social distancing during this time. And by social distancing, meaning I'm moving 500 miles that way, motherfucker. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so the QAnon thing, like, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens with them, because like there's the whole thing like when prophecy fails. Which usually what happens when prophecy fails is that the adherents become even more convinced.
The backfire effect is it's called and stuff. Like when you're presented with a lack of evidence and stuff that contradicts your things and stuff, you fall more heavy into the stuff. Mm-hmm. Now, for me, it really depends though. So there might be some that would really go and stuff, but I think for a lot of them, especially from the ones of the more reactionary crowd and stuff like that don't have a coherent policy, that are just like, I'm just here to own the libs, those guys and stuff like that they're just going to they're going to like 110% just dig deeper into the QAnon thing, and it's never going to go away. And I think if anything, it's probably just going to mutate. And the reason I'm saying that is if you listen to, like, at this point, QAnon very much qualifies what most people would consider a super conspiracy. There's so much into this stuff, but if you look at a lot of the things that it was based on, this is all stuff that we've been seeing for years and stuff like that, starting off with like a lot of anti-Semitic Nazi theories and stuff like that. Then you move later to like the NWO Illuminati, stuff like that. There's a lot, and I do mean a lot of stuff that's like taken wholesale from the 1980s satanic ritual abuse scare and stuff like that. Like,
in fact, Robert Evans of Behind the Bastards, he does a whole thing connecting QAnon to the satanic scare.
Yeah, like if you read any of that stuff up, it's like, this is just Michelle Remembers with extra steps. That's exactly what the fuck this is.
Yeah, Michelle Remembers. For those of you in the audience who don't know what Michelle Remembers is, this was during, like, in the 70s, and when everybody was freaking out about daycare. There was this woman whose husband was her therapist. So she married her own therapist, already red flags. And while he was therapizing her, they found recovered memories that she recovered. They weren't recovered. It was objectively false memories that he just implanted in her, but or they were scamming together, that she had been like raised by this satanic church. And this was taken very, very seriously, and the Michelle Remembers thing was passed out. Ironically also, and this is something people on the left need to really watch out for, part of the problem with the satanic panic was actually the believe X ideology. And I'm not going that to go against like the believe women thing, but the fact was that they had people doing the investigating in these instances of the satanic ritual sex abuse, and recovered memories and stuff. And they weren't cops or detectives, they were social workers. And in their social worker training, they were trained always believe the person who recounts a story of abuse. So they would run into people who had serious, neuroatypicality, people with, like, one of the women was very, she was a paranoid schizophrenic, and really seriously suffering from that. And so she was recounting delusions that were then accepted uncritically by people who were not trained to evaluate if what the person is telling me is true, because they were trained as caregivers, and instead to accept the narrative and to try to help that person move forward. So, when it comes to misinformation and just like batshit crazy stuff like QAnon, like, you can, the delusions that fuel it can be egged on by certain aspects of our culture. Now, I'm obviously not saying, someone comes up to you and says a horrible thing happened to me, believe them.
Yeah,
but when you get in, but like when it gets into the realm of the actual law where there are legal consequences, maybe be a little critical. That's what I'm saying there.
Well, not only that, but I remember too, like a lot of the psychologists kept essentially asking kids over and over and over until the kids eventually cracked and started making shit up. And I kind of, this kind of like strikes me as fucked. Well, I mean, it's fucked up, obviously, and stuff, but it kind of strikes me as weird because, like, actually nowadays, like, it's seriously, police in Japan, that's what they do for interrogation techniques too. They'll lock you up like. They can lock you up for, I think, a month straight without charges, and from dusk till dawn, keep asking you the same thing over and over. Yeah, until they basically get a forced confession. Yeah, in fact, Japan has like a 99.9% conviction rate because of this stuff.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
I
wonder why. Nope. Big mystery there. We're sure everybody that confessed totally was guilty. Yeah, nothing to do with the interrogation methods. It's fine. It's lovely. Everyone should move here. Everybody.
and everyone should move there and take part in your Food Not Bombs chapter in Japan.
Yeah.
So, you're talking about QAnon. So besides like dealing with that craziness, we're just going to move that aside. Like, again, I at least for me, I feel like what we can see is the relationship of the Democratic Party to the radical left today, and this is also because of people like AOC and Bernie and the success of those campaigns, is very different than it was to us under Obama with Occupy. And it was an incredibly antagonistic relationship, where you've got Michael Bloomberg calling the NYPD calling the New York Times and getting their assurance that they would take his side when he, sent out his stormtroopers to clear Zuccotti Park. We went from that to now you've got, kind of the whole bread tube stratosphere, and you've got AOC doing, and Ilhan Omar playing
Among Us. Yeah.
Among Us, which, by the way, just for everyone listening, that was delightful. I really loved that. But you can see that that's a very different relationship. And while I've met AOC, like I knew her, she was my bartender once.
Okay.
Yeah. But before she was famous, I doubt she remembers it. But I used to go to the restaurant she worked in, like on my break at work.
Okay.
And yeah, we actually had a conversation about Occupy. I could tell she was like really smart. And then like I looked up and I was like, wait a minute, when she was elected. I was really happy for her on that. That's why I always, when people come in and they're like, oh, she's dumb, she's a airhead. No. You can tell very, very quickly she's very intelligent when you speak to her. But my point being, even if she is genuine in what she wants to do, and I do think she is personally, the Democratic Party is not our friend.
Oh, no, I don't. I agree with that assessment 100%.
When they are back in power and we stop being an army of zealots that they can come to for aid, and they will try to co-opt as much of us as they possibly can and sheepdog as many of us away from the radical left and into the Democratic Party. And if they fail to do that, they will attack us. And that's exactly what happened with OWS. I remember like the day things were set with Occupy. They were ready to, I'm talking millions of dollars we were offered, like not me personally, but the movement, were offered by prominent liberals, including Ben and Jerry's, to essentially become a voter drive for the Democratic Party. To become the Democratic Tea Party. That's what they wanted. And Occupy told, get fucked. And the GA rejected it. And it was after that the crackdowns came and that Occupy was taken apart. And you saw, and the media came at us from the right and the left, and they were all saying the same thing. So be prepared for that as we move forward. The honeymoon phase that sort of BreadTube has enjoyed with the Democratic Party is not going to continue if the BreadTubers cannot be, I guess,
utilized or yeah. Well, here's the thing that I'm thinking with it though. Okay, because like Right now, though, mainstream Democrats, most of their voter block is mostly just older boomers. Like, a lot of people are talking. A lot of people will say, "Well, they have a lot of like black folks that are voting for stuff." Yeah, but it's like, if you look at it, it's less of a race thing and more of a like an age demographic thing, because younger black folks are way more progressive.
Yeah,
and so my thinking is that within, I would say, probably the next 20 or so years, that due to a thing called linear time, we're not going to be seeing so much of a lot of those boomer demographics are going to die off. And now you're going to be stuck with the Democratic Party is going to be stuck with the realization that their voter base is going to be basically those like disaffected progressives and stuff that they didn't bother trying to win over and stuff. And at that point, they're either going to have to put up or they're fucked. They can't sit down and toss out like some like, another Biden, more or less, and onto that thing and expect to get anywhere, because it's just like, that's not what your voter base is at this point. So I think they're going to have to go ahead and put up and shut up. But I think, though, right now, though, as it currently stands, they have no incentive to do so. And because of that, we need to go ahead and, as leftists, and take advantage of the fact that they don't give a shit about us and push, like what you were talking about, with direct action, with that kind of stuff, and go ahead and do that, organize, get in contact with other groups out there and stuff, and just push as much as you can and try to get that up front out there. And just make it as visible as possible and stuff. It's, to me, people think like that, the weekend, they'll say, the weekend and all of these, pensions, time off, the 8-hour workday. People will say, the government mandates that. No, it was the unions that won that for us. It was anarchists in the street, fighting and dying for it. Now, again, I'm not talking about any kind of violence right there. I want to preface that. I'm talking about civil disobedience. I'm talking about the hard, difficult struggle that you've got to do in the streets, that you also have to do. And some of it will also involve dealing with the powers that be, because there are ways to, you're never going to pull someone like Senator Schumer, Charles Schumer, left. It's not going to happen. Just like you're never going to pull Joe Biden to the left or Kamala Harris to the left. But what you can do is you can make their lives miserable until they give you what you need. Exactly. Yeah.
I will always recount this story. I was working at a university in fundraising, and I had a bunch of students, and essentially we were doing like telefundraising. So, I had like 20 students working for me and phones and everything. And this was around the time that SOPA and PIPA were up. And I was really concerned about it, so I called Senator Schumer, because I'm a constituent technically. And I called him up, and some intern or whatever answers the phone, and I'm like, hey, I'm really concerned about SOPA and PIPA. I would like to have a meeting with Senator Schumer so we can talk about this. And the intern goes to me, he's like, sir, are you aware that Senator Schumer is a co-sponsor of those bills? And I'm like, does that matter? Because I'm a constituent and I'm concerned about this, and I think I should meet with him. He's like, he's not going to meet with you. And I'm like, okay, so can I leave a message? And the kid's like, yes, you can leave a message. And so, I say a couple things, get really mad, hang up the phone. And I'm sitting there and I'm kind of like, and then I look down and I realize I've got a staff and 20 phones. And so I said to my staff, I go, hey, who wants an extra 10 minutes of break? And every one of the students in the room is just like, oh, me. And I'm like, okay, so here's what you're going to do. Call Senator Schumer. Here's the number. And request a meeting to talk about SOPA and PIPA. Tell me you're really concerned about it. And literally, like, down the line, one after another, after six calls, they were like, oh my God, stop. He will meet with people. And they did meet with activists. And, those bills, not just through that, but they were stopped. And this is the kind of thing that people don't realize that makes like stuff like the NRA, because the NRA is not very popular, but they're very good at harassing politicians until they do what they want. So essentially what I'm saying is legally troll your representatives. Get out there, call them, get in, speak to them, send them letters, flood their calls, flood their mailboxes, and eventually they will give you what you want just to make you shut up. So, direct action is not just breaking a freaking window or something,
No, I agree with you 100%. Like, okay, so while I don't have as much experience with that kind of stuff there, I can go ahead and relate like a little bit with what I have over here in Japan and stuff. So here's the thing. Japan has a ton of issues. I'm not going to get into a bunch of them right now and stuff, but Japan generally does not respond to any of its internal problems that it has unless it faces serious international pressure. So I'll give you a good example I have. So I have a friend of mine. He's an investigative journalist, he's an author, a human rights activist, and I think he's actually going to have an Amazon series about him right now by the name of Jake Adelson. Right, he wrote a book called Tokyo Vice. In the book, he at the time and stuff, he was talking about he was investigating the Yakuza actually and stuff. He actually had a hit out on him by a high-ranking Yakuza actually and stuff.
Sounds like a Yakuza.
So he actually got sent back to Japan by the Department of Justice, I think, to go ahead and do investigations onto that stuff. And while he was here, he uncovered a lot of human trafficking rings and stuff that were ran by that and stuff like that. And there were laws on the book that basically said that were not protecting a lot of them, any of the workers out there. Because essentially, how the laws worked was if a human trafficking victim and stuff, we'll say usually like in the sex industry and stuff, were to come forward and stuff, they wouldn't take her claim. They would simply arrest her for overstaying her visa and send them away. Obviously, that doesn't help anybody out there. And Jake had tried like crazy to go ahead and get Japan to change it from the inside, but nobody gave a crap. So what he did is he sent the story about it to a U.S. paper. That made the biggest news, and then like the world found out that like they had possibly one of the worst ratings for helping human trafficking victims on the planet, second only to like I think it was like something like one or two other countries out there and stuff. And at that point, Japan's like, okay, fuck, we need to do something about that. But yeah, that's essentially kind of similar to what you were describing real quick and stuff.
Yeah.
That just harass them as much as you can until you get what you want. So yes, that does in fact work really good if you want to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, we had Zevin X in the comment. A lot of communists too fighting for workers' rights alongside our anarchist brothers and sisters. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Actually, and if people are out there like, no, left unity doesn't exist. Let me tell you something right now. As somebody that's been living in Japan for years and stuff, we have the longest history of left unity out there. Like anarchist, socialist, and communist, way back in the day, we were always together fighting. We were talking with guys before World War II broke out and stuff over in Korea and stuff like that. We had groups like Sekiran Kai and stuff like that had prominent socialists onto it, stuff like that. We had prominent anarchists. They were the Blue Stocking Society. We were all working together. And even after that and stuff, we still get along and stuff. Now, mind you, I'm not going to say we don't have issues. Like, for example, over here we have the Japan Communist Party, like the oldest surviving vanguard party on the planet. And I'm not going to say I don't have issues with them. I went to their headquarters and sent a guy. I tried to sit down with them and found out real quick they don't give a shit about you unless you can vote. But be that as it may and stuff, if I ever go to like some marches and stuff like that where we're going against like the far right guys out there and stuff like that, if you want to do like the anti-Olympics thing out there, which by the way, if anyone's listening, you really should look into and stuff. There's a lot of issues, a lot of people that people are not aware about with Japan and the Olympics and stuff. There's a lot.
The Olympics in general tend to like. I love the Olympics for what they symbolize and what they do with the world. That we come together around, sports competition instead of murdering each other. I think that's a wonderful thing. But yeah, the Olympics have a history of treating the communities that they're in horribly. And like also the countries just in general, like when they bring the Olympics to their town, like it's really bad for the people that live there.
Well, it's not even that. Oh, that's one aspect that we have too, because there's a bunch of districts right now that are going to be threatened to be torn down and stuff because they don't represent a good image. But there's something even bigger about this that a lot of people aren't aware of and stuff. Because like Abe had we don't have Abe anymore. He finally fucked off and quit after like just failing miserably with like everything he's been doing in a while. But prior to then, a lot of people aren't aware of this and stuff like that. So he had paid really big money to get the Olympics in Japan and stuff, and he had a lot of he has connections to the Yakuza. A lot of the like, especially basically like the Yakuza and politicians, especially right wingers, are practically married and stuff. So they went ahead and basically allegedly, so I don't get like sued, but allegedly. He went ahead and had some Yakuza members go ahead and bribe Olympic official committee members to go ahead and feature it in there. And the reason he did this is because Abe has been trying to go push for Article 9 of the Japanese Constitution to change, which is deeply unpopular. For people that don't know that, that's the thing that says that they can't have their own military, sort of a thing like that. Because because
the last time they had their own military, Nazis.
Yeah, basically, yes. Because here's the thing that a lot of people aren't aware about him and a lot of guys in the Liberal Democratic Party, which is the thing. They're part of a group called the Nippon Kaigi. And these guys are basically neo-Confederates, but way worse. They're big on historical revision, pretending things like the rape of Nanking didn't happen, like this whole 9 yards. And basically, a lot of them are like far-right extremists that want to return to like the emperor being like, the figurehead of the state and stuff, a return to state-sponsored Shinto, the whole 9 yards. And one of the things that they've been pushing for, too, is to have their own military to do that kind of stuff like that. And this is deeply unpopular. Even the emperor, the emperor wants nothing to do with it. He's like, are you out of your fucking mind? Like, Akihito was just like, I see where this went. No, full stop. What the fuck?
Yeah.
But the thing is, though, is if he has the Olympics here, people will be too distracted with that to give a shit about Article 9, and he can pass it unnoticed and stuff. And it gets even worse because, like, when Corona first came out, he was purposely downplaying how bad it was and telling people to still go out because he wanted the Olympics here. And that actually caused Corona to spread way worse than it ever would have been. Yeah, he probably would have kept bullshitting about it up to the point where there was a guy by the name of Ken Shimura, who was an incredibly famous comic, ended up catching it and dying. And at that point, nobody could deny it. And then he's like, okay, we need to do something. But yeah.
So, and I do think COVID also is going to change a lot of this stuff. But I wanted to just jump in on something because this is something that I have noticed, at least as I've involved myself more in online spaces outside of the anarchist ones that we've built and outside of activist spaces, like when I get involved with like BreadTube and stuff. And like what I've noticed is that there's a very big difference, like when they talk about there being no left unity. These are a lot of the people that say this are basing that on having bad interactions in forums and communities with, like, the dumbest version of a tank.
I agree. Yeah. No, I agree with that 100%.
And like when we were moderating Anarchist versus Libertarian, the former ANCAP v ANCOM debate group, we had a rule. We didn't ban tankies. What we did was our rule was no genocide denial. And if some of them were becoming a problem, someone would say something about Holodomor, and the ones that jumped into it, then they'd get ejected. But the fact is that the Marxists, like, who were interested in the Soviet form of communism and the benefits and the negatives of it as well, the ones that actually had a brain in their head and weren't just, Russophiles, they wound up being a great part of our community. Similarly, like in the streets, dude, I've got friends that are Marx-Leninists. I've got friends that are Maoists. I've got friends that are weird kinds of communists that I've never heard of. I know one trot, he's like a rich guy who wanted to buy the Yippie Museum in New York when we needed it sold because the hippies are bad at paperwork, and he wanted to turn it into a tiki bar. But the fact is that these there is left unity. You will be happy for these people when you're in the street facing a line of riot cops or facing a line of freaking Proud Boys, and you find very quickly that if you actually do activism like you do, Chris, and like I have done in the past, ideological differences and similarities are less important as who is going to show up on the day, who is going to be there, who can be counted on. And that's something that I think a lot of the people that have had their head in this sort of influencer version of the left, and I'm not saying it's bad, it has its place. And a lot of the people who are primarily career influencers and not activists, they still do good work. But it gives you a false idea of what left activism is and what left politics are. And can lead you into some very toxic things where people are getting dogpiled for, suspect reasons, to say the least at times. I'm not going to mention any names. I don't want to stick my head in a drama,
you can just hear the keyboards typing up right now. What did you say about my thing? You fucking shit liberal shit board. Like, bro,
yeah,
seriously.
Exactly. You can hear that. And the thing is that, like, again, we should not, if someone's being a jerk in your spaces, if someone is being aggressive towards others, you do need to call them out. You do need to put up a bit of a wall when people are just, especially online, because people are worse online than they are face to face. But at the same time, there are people who think differently than you, who are still comrades and still good comrades and can be counted on. And there are people who think exactly the same as you and say all the right things and have all the right beliefs in lockstep with the rest of the community. But when, the shit hits the fan, some of those people, they will not be there on the day, or worse, they will be the people informing the feds. They will be the people who roll over on you. Yeah.
Well, like, if we're just talking about, like, because you were talking about your thing with Occupy and everything that you had. So, like, with my Food Not Bombs chapter that I have, right? So I'm honestly basically the only actual anarchist in there. Like, other than that, it's like my wife, who is self-described apolitical. We have another Japanese girl and stuff like that who joined. She's a Christian. I don't even know what her beliefs are, but she just wants to help people. We have another guy who popped up recently from, I think, Yokohama, stuff like that, who's a socialist. And until Zong went back and stuff like that, he was, a Ho Chi Minh thought advocate and stuff. But that was it. We were all over the damn place, ideologically speaking and stuff. But we worked great together and stuff like that. At the end of the day, that was what mattered, was showing up, doing what we came to do and stuff, and trying to go spread that message. And I think that's something that a lot of, and so if people are worried about, well, what about the ideological whatever stuff? I just say, don't worry about them, because in reality, most people will go ahead and just jump onto your board. And this is actually something I said with you weren't on the last one and stuff. When I was doing the one with my sister, actually, one thing that I was talking about was
who is supposed to be on this podcast, by the way.
But at this point, I'm pretty sure it's just not happening. But whatever. I think, but basically, so I was talking about with people where they're worried about, like, well, what happens if somebody's going to come, some toxic person is going to come and try to take over in the thing. And I was just pointing out, realistically speaking, most of the viewers, and I'm assuming most of the viewers on this channel right now, most of you guys are living in a first world country that has been bombarded with Cold War, with like Red Scare propaganda since the beginning of the Cold War. You don't have a vanguard party. No one is going to co-opt you. No one's going to bust down, kick your doors out, and be a dick. Just go out, start something, anything. Go, if you're not sure, get involved, ask around what local people need and do something, and people will just come ahead and join in, and they're not going to try to impose their ideology onto you. From my personal experience, and it's not even just with Food Not Bombs, there's another group I'm part of, Tokyo Spring, over in, Tokyo and stuff like that. They just kind of follow whatever the person is that founded it, or the general idea of what that happens and stuff like that. They may not agree with that, but they'll be like, okay, sure, I can deal with that. And they'll just go with you. That's how that works. That's real left unity. That's how you have to deal with, like, you don't have to worry about, like, oh, am I going to get rid of toxic people and stuff like that. They just really don't pop up. And in those kind of situations, if they do, they get booted like that. There's a reason that the purity spiral guys never last, because nobody wants to be around them. That's just,
And also, by the way, I should also point out, if you're organizing in meat space a lot, you have a couple of issues. You've got the purity spiral guys who are actually purity spiral. They're just assholes. Then you have crazy people, and they will be there. And then you have infiltrators. And sometimes they're cops, and sometimes they're part of the like a conservative organization that tries to take you down. And you would think that this stuff is paranoid if you haven't done activism. But when I've seen stuff like this happen. I remember when I was at the N17, we had something like between 30 and 50,000 people in the streets in New York. Papers reported it as 5,000, by the way. And like, at that during that day, with all of the actions going on, there was a guy who tried to talk everybody into jumping the turnstiles in New York after we had just had a talk with everybody using the People's Mic about like how important it was to actually pay for your ticket, because in New York, if you jump the turnstiles, like 6 cops will tackle you immediately. So as soon as they were done doing that, we went into the subway. This guy starts yelling, jump the turnstiles, screw the man, we're going to do this. And I'm like, dude, don't do that. He's like, yeah, no, do it. It's a great idea. And I'm like, okay, you do it. And he's like, well, but I have a ticket. And I'm like, okay, shut up. Now, that exact guy, I later went to the Million Hoodies March, which was like the precursor to Black Lives Matter after Trayvon Martin got killed. And in the Million Hoodies March, I watched that same guy walking at the march as part of the march, reach into his pocket, pull an egg out, hit somebody in the back of the head with it, and like tried to start a fight right then and there. There was also another guy, I didn't know this guy, but was well known around Zuccotti Park in certain circles. Turns out he was an NYPD police officer, and he was outed when he attacked a family while infiltrating a biker gang on the West Side Highway and like broke in their window. So yeah, so like, yes, these people are there. You sit there and like that. We had an Occupy Wall Street kitchen set up one day at Union Square, and I watched a guy come by, pulled out like a ball, like a paper mache round brown ball, hit it, ashes all over the food, ruining it for everyone. And we turned to the cop and we're like, "You gonna do something?" And the cop's like, "No." Like the thing is that you will have these people, and then you will also have, there was a woman named Nan who literally would show up at every spokes council meeting and every GA with the stated goal that I will destroy this movement, and doing everything in her power to derail and destroy and distract. I don't know if she was in the pay of a conservative group. I think she was just nuts and like wanted the attention. But the thing is, you will have to deal with all of those people. But also, if you're a seasoned activist and you're around seasoned activists, we know how to deal with that. And so, you don't get the purity spiral as often as you do within, these online spaces.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. By the way, so we had a couple questions here. I'm for Zevin-X. I'm loving Zevin-X. I'm all in for the idea of left unity. Got a black and red tattoo on my bicep along with no pasaran, divided we fail. Divided we fall.
Brother.
Thank you. Yeah, I have from MOI Volen. Do you agree with the fourth position? So I don't actually know what the fourth position is.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know what that is. If you could elaborate on that, homeboy, we could talk about that as much.
I think here's what I'll say. I think it's got something to do with that evil wizard Alexander Dugin that everybody has decided is the worst human being on the planet. I gotta tell you, I have never read Dugin's writings. I don't intend to read Dugin's writings. I'm inclined to believe that he is in fact an evil wizard, and especially if you name it the fourth position, because third position was the term for fascism.
That sounds just that sounds a wee bit sus. Yeah. Emergency meeting.
Yeah. Now,
fourth position has been ejected. It was the imposter.
Yeah, it's we got a guy going Duginism. Yeah, I don't know if it's a thing. I've got a friend who's involved with like Antifa stuff. He's been freaking out about the evil wizard Dugin for years. This is what I'm going to say. I am an anarchist and a communist because I believe deep down that all of us regardless of race, nationality, creed, religion, are equal and equally deserving of the fruits of the earth and equally deserving of life, liberty, and the finding whatever kind of happiness we can in this short trip between the cradle and the crematorium. If your socialism puts nation and family first and argues that certain people should be abused and denied this basic right of humanity, I'm going to reject that. Now, again, I haven't read Dugin. I don't know what the hell he talks about. I'm probably not going to, because I don't want to subject my brain to evil Russian cells.
You know, if you do that, you're just gonna you're gonna feel the brain cells slowly leaking out of your head as your IQ drops like 30 fucking points listening to this shit.
Yeah, dude, I literally read because did you see that series that they put out on I forget what it was called, but the guy who played Vision in the Avengers played the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski?
No, I did not. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, they put out a series on him, like on the life of the Unabomber, and my parents loved it. Like, they're like, "Oh, you've got to watch this. It's incredible." And so I started watching it, and they presented the Unabomber like in the thing as like this dude able to, again, dark wizard, able to hypnotize FBI agents into turning against the system partially by complaining about people stopping at red lights at night when there's nobody around. And so I was literally like, okay, I got to read this. I've got to read the Unabomber's manifesto, because you know what? I don't feel your dark spells, Ted Kaczynski. And I read it and I was just like, oh my God, this is insufferable. Like, I got a couple chapters in and I'm just like, this is just like freaking 4chan crap.
Little known fact, Ted Kaczynski was a 4chan meme that just went a little too far.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Well, 4chan meme in the sense that he was like literally tortured by what was it, MK Ultra. And then he was like,
wow,
yeah, he was literally tortured in college by MK Ultra, and then he's like, yeah, that didn't have any effect on me, and I'm like, yeah, I think it did, Ted.
So, buddy, you're sending bombs to people that might have something. I'm not an expert, or anything like that, but yeah.
So that's our answer on fourth positionism. I don't know what it is. I don't want to know what it is, but if it sucks, I'm opposed to it.
It's not Sadism. It sucks. Sorry. If your communism doesn't have nukes and dolphins, are you even really a communist? I don't think so. Come on now. Come on.
So then we have from Zevin again. What is your guys' opinion on Marxist-Leninism being a pragmatic path forward on the path to anarchism, specifically to create the anarcho-socialist society?
That's a very good question, and this is my personal opinion. I think it really depends on where you're at, what your vanguard party is like, and a number of other important things. Like I was talking about earlier, over here in Japan, we have a Marxist-Leninist party and stuff, the Japanese Communist Party. Like I said, oldest surviving communist party on the planet. And one of the reasons I became an anarchist was during my time when I was just sort of prior to becoming like this, I would just say I was just a general like anti-capitalist, right? I actually went ahead and went to Sentagaya, to the headquarters of the Japanese Communist Party out there. And when I first went in there, of course, there was that first brief second where they took a look and saw a foreigner. I'm like, boys, our time has finally come. We gotta watch. So, because they apparently they didn't get a lot of us down there, but so they like scrambled, just said, sit down here and wait, kind of excitedly, right? And I thought, oh, cool, this would be kind of fun, maybe they could talk, because at that point I had a lot of concerns, things I wanted to talk about and stuff. So I was just sitting there, right? And I was just sitting down, and then they sent down a representative about 20 minutes after I'm sitting in the chair, right? And then they had some guy, a Japanese dude, coming down to my stuff, and he could speak English, and he's talking to me and everything like that. And at this point, there was a lot of things I wanted to go discuss and stuff like that. I wanted to go talk, stuff like that, because like I liked a lot of the things that they were talking about, but I was also wanted to talk about like, issues and stuff for like permanent residents over here, people that aren't Japanese, because Japan has a huge xenophobia problem, stuff like that, especially if you're like Chinese, Zainichi Korean and stuff like that. Some of the indigenous folks like the Ainu or the Ryukyuans down in Okinawa and stuff like that. And or even just like foreigners, period, and stuff that are like, not citizens and anything like that. And the only thing I wanted to know was, can you vote? And I was like, well, of course I can't. I'm just, I don't have I'm not a citizen kind of thing like that. And he's just like, I'll just go ahead and read this this little, you can read this thing or take a look on the internet. And I'm just like, really? And it made me mad because, like, there's a lot of things that JCP pushes out that I agree with. I think a lot of the things that they stand for are really good. But my thing is like, you can't really call yourself a movement of the people if you don't actually represent all the people there. And it's very important nowadays and stuff because Japan's, despite like the alt-right's insistence on Japan being an ethno-state, it's not, and the demographics are changing, and you can even see that. In fact, our last, I think the last two Miss Japan, not the last two, but like we had already.
Wait, you mean to tell me 4chan doesn't have a good idea of what Japan is really like?
Like, those motherfuckers just think it's nothing but body pillows and Hello Kitty. Shut that, like, seriously, come, like, go home, weeaboo, like, fuck. But no,
you really should have done this sooner. This is one of my favorite streams on the channel so far.
Oh man, we should do another one. Trust me, I have a lot, dude. Yeah. I could tell you about a lot of shit and stuff that I've done because I've had weeks. I think you were there when I was talking about that one Uyoko Dante far right dude from fucking New Zealand that was trying to badmouth my ass.
Yeah. Oh yeah, guys, this is hilarious. There was
I'm not going to mention the guy's name because we kind of put it aside for right now. But yeah, There's a guy from New Zealand who has a YouTube channel who is paid by a Japanese far-right guy who also has ties to the Texas Daddy guy who's a fucking grifter. But getting aside, well, we were in a group once, and he found out that I was a communist. He found out I had a food not bombs and was like seriously convinced that my food not bombs thing was this massive communist conspiracy to come over and just like destroy Japan or cuck them all or turn them into soy boys, even though we all eat soy over here. That's like another thing, or whatever the hell it is that was going on in his head at the time. And I'm just like, buddy, full fucking stop, okay? Like, I don't even get to talk about that shit there. I just go and feed the fucking homeless. Like, what do you think we do and stuff? You can only eat this if you can sit down and name off the top of your head, like pages 1 through 40 in the Conquest of Bread. Like, it doesn't work like that. Like, come on now.
Yeah. So beyond that, I'm going to answer Zevin's question as well, and I'm going to go on a little more of a theoretical thing because I think here's the issue with the Vanguard Party. So the idea essentially is you're going to get people who are smart into positions of power to represent the powerless and to take control of the state and to build socialism that way. And I think that is an interesting approach. I think it is inherently flawed in a couple of ways. And the biggest one that I have, and I've got a lot of tanky friends. I've asked them this question, and maybe somebody will give me an answer to this. But here's the problem. They think people are static. They think you can take someone from an oppressed class and put them into a vanguard party and take control of the government with that vanguard party, and they will still have the same outlook and values that they did when they were the person in the oppressed class. What they don't realize, I think, is that people are dynamic and that we change with regard to our circumstances. So and you should understand this, because, again, our circumstances in acting, we'd call it our given circumstances, or if you want to use dialectical materialism, our material circumstances. As those change, our outlook and our values change. So the person at the beginning of that journey is going to be totally different from the person at the end. Now, maybe you can get that person, if there's a way to account for that transition, if there's a way to do it not simply on an individual level, but on an institutional level, where you can keep people grounded once you've given them all the power in the world or close to it, I think it could be incredibly effective. But what we have to watch out for, again, is the inherent problem with the state. And the problem with the state is people must be in those positions of power to give the orders. And when you put the people in those positions of power, those people have a group of about 150 people, if they're smart, that they can recognize as individuals, and everyone else becomes an abstract. And as a result, they will be more loyal to that 150 people that they know than to anyone else. So I think I have seen vanguard parties work effectively. I think a great example is Vietnam, actually. And I, even before like I met American Johnson and we started streaming together, and before I started listening to Luna Oi, I would usually hold up Vietnam as an example of communism and Marxism.
All those discussions with Zong, right?
Yeah,
when he was back in there. Yeah.
Yeah. But like, yeah, the whole thing is like, I think it has to do with the culture of the country as well. Like people talk about Russia and they're like, oh, Russia was creepy and authoritarian when they were Marx-Leninists. Well, look at Russia now. They're not Marx-Leninists anymore and they're creepy and authoritarian. Maybe it's just Russia. Which isn't to say, I shouldn't complain too much about Russia, because that is very much a pop culture idea of it. But also, I think Vladimir Putin may literally be a vampire, because he took control of Russia when I was in high school. And he looks about exactly the same the first time I saw him. Then, like, I saw him, like, a picture of him last week. And I'm like, yeah, you may be a vampire.
It's a little known secret. All the things with him in sunlight, that's bullshit. It's in a night studio with lights coming down. And the second he touches the sunlight, he bursts into fucking flames. That's
the Possadists. They'll have the thing. So I mean, that's my take on it. Now, that said, I think that there's something really about with Marxist anarchist collaboration. So I think there's an anarchist personality type, and I think there's a Marxist personality type, and I think there's a crossover and stuff between the two of them. But me and Caleb, for instance, are very different people. We behave differently, but ultimately we've managed to become friends through collaboration, through working in the street, and we complement each other. Orwell wrote famously about anarchists in Catalonia and the conflict with the Marxists, that essentially the communists, the anarchist focus is always primarily on liberty and equality, and the Marxist focus is usually on centralization and organization. And in Spain, because of the way the conditions were, those two things could not be reconciled, and instead one had to swallow the other. And the way it worked out was that the Marxists swallowed the anarchists and then set about losing the war. But that doesn't have to happen. I think that the goal moving forward would be to balance these two tendencies and two ways of doing things and thinking about things. And if you can thread that needle, I don't think anything in the world can stop us. And I think that's, what was it? Otto von Bismarck said, the crowned heads of Europe will quake with terror if ever once again the black and red reunite. If people can walk that line, if they can thread that needle, I think that may be one of the major keys to the actual establishment of socialism and communism. But you got to think there's a lot of people that are going to be against it. There's going to be egos in there that want their brand in front of everybody else, and there's also going to be COINTELPRO people doing their best to keep us all at each other's throats, because I mean that's what they do. I'm not even mad at them for it, because what else are they going to do? It's their job.
Yeah, I agree. But like I said, if anyone's worried about, well, how would you get rid of them? Like I said, honestly, if you just start your own move, you start your own thing or whatever stuff, people will just tend to jump out regardless of tendency and stuff. And so that's a much easier way to go ahead and deal with that kind of stuff. So honestly, just start your own thing. That's the best way of advice I can give to have that sort of solve that problem. Go
stop. This is a major thing about like anarchism for me. Stop waiting for someone else to give you permission to make the world a better place. Just it doesn't matter if it's small. It doesn't matter if, it only makes the world better for one other person, or maybe just makes the world better for you, and nobody else cares. The act of doing that will really change. It's like my Buddhist organization, very big on that. And Buddhism, like in general, is about was the term that we use is like human revolution, and the act of throwing yourself into something, into a project to make things better. That's going to teach you important things, and when a person is doing that, when a person is actually like living their truth and making a positive change, that person becomes infectious, and you will pull other people to you. And so go start a Food Not Bombs, go attend a protest, go be the change that you want to see. You want to see,
exactly. And if you you don't even have to do like anarchist organizations like Food Not Bombs per se. If you're not really sure stuff, go out to the bars, go out to people where people talk to and stuff like that. Talk to them, see what they have and stuff like that. Say, how you doing? Anything like that. See issues that they have. If you're going ahead and going out of your way to help them and get something that is direct, tangible proof that you don't need like, a Vanguard Party or anything else, that you guys can in fact make anarchy work, that you're actually actively taking care of.
Or make communism or Marxism work.
Exactly.
I mean, dual power is one of those, that's a huge thing. And the fact is that one of the reasons we're in this hostage situation with capitalism and with the liberal ruling class is they control the food supply, and they control the news and information, and they control our access to housing and clean water. And one of these days, probably pretty soon, they're going to try to control the air that we breathe. And the fact of the matter is that go out, and if you can get those resources for your people in a different way, that's a step in the right direction. I really think that. And I don't get pulled into lifestyleism. You still need to live in the world and make the argument, but again, it's a line you got to walk.
Yeah, I agree.
So, okay. So we've been at this for like almost an hour and a half. I'm having a really good time. Do you want to keep going, or do you want to start to wrap up?
For now, unfortunately, I kind of got to wrap up because we got something to take care of a little bit later, unfortunately, but we can always do this again some other time.
Absolutely. Real quick, by the way, though, I did want to address something because we did bring it up and we teased it at the beginning, and that's the work camps in anarchist Catalonia. So this is the thing. I haven't done a lot of research on this particular aspect of it, so I may come back if we do it again and really look into it. But I have looked into the immediate claims. And here's the thing. I found out about those work camps very, very recently, and I did not find out about it in any of my research. I found out about it on the internet. And here's the other thing. So when I was preparing for my my screenplay about the life of Buenaventura Durruti, and when I was reading into this, I was reading sources across the board. I was reading liberal sources like Spain in Our Hearts by Adam Hochschild. I was reading, anarchist sources like Durruti by Abel Paz, and the CNT and the Spanish Revolution, also by Abel Paz, who was literally there and was jailed by the Francoist regime. And I was even reading like fascist sources and sources that like were, friendly to the fascists, because you have to understand the way the fascists think if you're going to understand anarchism, so far out from in this particular conflict. And none of them mentioned the work camps, not even the fascists. And so this has me thinking, Oliver Garcia, who became the general secretary of the CNT and became the first anarchist minister of justice when the anarchists took over. One of his first actions was to free every prisoner in their territory. And most of those prisoners were given the choice that you can go or you can join us. And most of them chose to join what's called the Iron Column, which was one of the strongest anarchist fighting forces during the Spanish Civil War. It was entirely convicts and political prisoners. If there were people who were put into work camps, they would have been people who were most likely unrepentant fascists. And this would have been people that were not massacred in because there were massacres on both sides. There were worse killings. There were worse. The White Terror was way worse than the Red Terror. And I mean, you can look that up. It's well documented. The Spanish ruling class, spoiler, they hunted human beings for sport, from horseback. They called it Reforma Agraria for
Jesus
years.
Christ.
Yeah, dude, you have no idea. This is why people are like, oh, we're on the edge of revolution in the United States. No, we're not. Because
not even close.
Yeah, you got to understand, like they had company unions. Look up pistolerismoism, and I'm totally mispronouncing that. Again, documented.
Okay.
This is, imagine you're in a union and you don't know if the guy sitting next to you is another union member or if he is a paid assassin hired by the boss to join the union and to pretend to be a worker and to murder anyone who talks about striking. Hundreds of people were killed with the pistolerismoism. And,
wow.
The
fact, Pinkertons on steroids.
Dude, it's the Spanish, oh my God, like they were in this period, like they talk about it being like the passionate war and like the Spanish character being like passionate, and there's passion, and then there is some incredible savagery that went on, and those were the conditions that led to that battle. So if people were put into work camps, what I'm going to say is, if it was truly a massive injustice and huge, what's it called, and huge hypocrisy on the anarchist part, the fascists would have weaponized that in their propaganda, and they didn't, which leads me to believe that it just wasn't something that was a huge deal. I'm guessing this was people, unrepentant fascists who could not be trusted within the rest of society, who then also they didn't want to murder. Now, that said, anytime society sets up this kind of thing, anytime you set up any kind of prison system or camp system or whatever, you're going to do it wrong. And there's going to be people there that don't deserve to be there. So I'm not going to 100% say everything was okay. And I'm sure there were probably some major problems and possibly even some atrocities because, hey, it's war. But again, I would expect, knowing what I know, that I would have encountered information about this much sooner, and that the Francoists would have been waving those camps around in much the same way that they waved around, the murders of priests and nuns. Because, oh, by the way, the Francoists also murdered priests and nuns. But and a lot of priests and nuns were combatants in this struggle. So I'm going to say, one way or the other, regardless of what happened, we now have a responsibility to learn about the past and to overcome the mistakes that may have been made, if there were mistakes, and there probably, just law of averages, there probably were. But also, we need to be critical about history, and there is a lot of people who are very interested in slandering the Spanish anarchists because it is one of the few times in human history when we did throw off the yoke of capitalism and we had functional socialism, and it worked for 3 straight years and ran on. It's one of the most shining examples of socialism in human history, and people will want to take that down, whether that's someone talking about the anarcho status of Spain or they're talking about the anarcho concentration camps. That's my thought on it.
No, okay, yeah, so, I'm not as well-read about that as you are and stuff like that, so I can't comment, 100% on the whole thing and stuff, but, if you've done enough research to that doesn't really... If you said you did enough personal research to kind of indicate that it really wasn't a prominent thing, per se, if it existed. So, I kind of agree with a lot of what you were saying. No, my thing is, if it did exist out there and stuff, obviously it should sort of kind of go without saying and stuff that we should be able to condemn it out there. I'm not saying, I'm not gonna, okay, I forget who asked the question. Now, if it was a tanky trying to do it as some sort of one-upsmanship kind of a thing out there, I mean, I hate to break it to you, but I believe in the critical part of the critical support. So if that did in fact happen, I'm not going to be like, oh no, it's cool. It's cool. Slavery. Come on now, guys. It's just a couple of labor camps. We can do that. Don't worry. It's great. Of course I'm going to fucking call it out, but so, like, I mean, if it did in fact happen and stuff, yeah, I can go ahead and be critical to it and stuff. Like, but as you kind of said, it probably wasn't as prominent out there. As far as what you were talking about with the whole discussion about like how hard prison stuff is out there, if it was worst case offenders that were kind of doing this stuff out there, granted, I would still prefer they weren't even doing that if that was a thing. But as you said, especially in that kind of system, prison is just, it's so hard to take accountability towards everything out there. You can try to mitigate the worst as much as you can, and you absolutely should. Like, I'm not saying just go out there expecting, well, it's not going to be that bad, so just fuck it, just do whatever. No, try to do your best as you can. But if you can't, but if something does happen and stuff, I mean, sometimes it's just inevitable and stuff. Now, grind you, it does turn out that there were some camps out there. I think from a historical perspective, that it's important to learn what happened, why it happened, why it's there, so that later we as anarchists can better ourselves, so that when we do create a society for that thing, we could say, no, that we can do better. We don't need to do that sort of stuff. But past that, like I said and stuff, I think right now it's just, like I said, I don't know as much about the whole situation as you do and stuff, so I'm just going to go ahead and say, like, if it happened, it sucked, cool, please don't do it. Please don't start. Public service announcement. Work camps are bad. Please don't. Work camps
are bad. Whether they're in freaking Germany, Spain, Russia, or on our southern border right now. Just usually when people are like, "Hey, we're going to concentrate people into a camp," that's not going to work out very well. I think part of it also, if I'm not mistaken, part of the rationale behind using the work camps with regards to, reactionaries was the idea that labor could help them reform, which I don't know, anytime, like, you'd look at the Stanford prison experiment and it wasn't as bad. It wasn't really as bad as people say with the Stanford prison experiment. Like, the experiment itself was bad, but it was kind of designed to be bad and to make Philip Zimbardo got the reaction that he wanted.
It was designed to elicit a certain reaction, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. And Philip Zimbardo did stuff like that all the time. Like, there's a great thing where they just real quick where they talk about, like, they parked cars in dodgy areas and watched them to see if, like, and broken windows policing is based on this, and watched the cars to see if people would destroy or steal the cars or whatever. And the cars were left completely alone until Philip Zimbardo himself got up on top of the car in front of a bunch and just, like, started breaking the windows and stuff. And then the students were like, "Oh, we get to break a car? This is great." And that's where broken windows policing comes from.
Wow.
So there was an idea at the time that, labor would help these people understand and reform them. And I can see why they would think that, because essentially in Spain, they had what was called the latifundian system, which was exported to Cuba and a lot, where it was basically like feudalism with extra steps. And it was like these landed aristocracy that held the people that worked for them in utter contempt. And, like, literally, like, in the Lincoln Brigade, there was a famous nurse who was an African-American who came over. And when she saw how the Spanish upper class talked about the lower classes in Spain, she's like, "I have never, ever seen any kind of oppression like this that wasn't based on race. I've never seen this that bad." Like, this is, she was basically saying that the issues that she was dealing with, like, in the freaking Jim Crow South, were pretty much a similar struggle that the Spanish lower class was having to deal with at the hands of the Spanish upper class. Like, you saw, like, when they called in, what was it, Rwanda, with, like, they called the one people cockroaches. Like,
okay.
There were that level of hatred existed within Spain, where, like, fascist generals were quoted as saying, like, "Do you know what the problem is with Spain? Like, indoor plumbing." in previous years, spiritually better times, we could count on these vermin to be wiped out by plague. But, because they're not dying, like, of course they're getting infected with the virus of Bolshevism because rats carry the plague. And so we just have to kill them all. Like, that's the attitude. And like, imagine you capture somebody who thinks like that. Like, what are you going to do with them? And you can see why somebody was like, well, maybe, some honest hard work will, get them thinking to change their mind. And
no, I can see why people might, like, okay, because, like, right, like, I have, since we're talking about, like, anarchist and other things, examples, stuff like that, like, I know it's not anarchist, but Rojava is still definitely within the libertarian socialist spectrum. And I remember they were doing, like, interviews and stuff like that with some of the captured ISIS fighters down there, stuff like that. And we don't really need to discuss to our audience everything that went wrong, that ISIS has done wrong and stuff like that. It's well effing documented, and all the horrific things that they've done, and like the conditions they. Now, I don't know if they have like work camps down there, but I know the prisons themselves aren't great. A lot of the prisoners down there, there's like fleas on them and everything else like that. The areas are hot and crap like that and stuff. So, and I can kind of see why they would be put into that position and stuff. But yeah, I guess kind of like what you were saying with a same kind of mentality, so to speak.
Yeah, we had a question on the source. I found it, there was something, I found it in people talking about it on libcom.org. So I'm just going to put this out to the folks looking into it. You guys can look into this. But like I said, I've done a ridiculous amount of reading on this period, and I had never heard of it. And again, if there were real, like, super serious atrocities, the fascists would have used it in their propaganda, and they just didn't. Now, that said, I could have just missed it. Maybe none of the authors that I read were aware of it, but it seems super obscure. And you really look at people who want to slander the CNT-FI, who want to make sure that to tell everybody that, no, this was actually garbage. Like, if this was a really serious problem, I think we would have heard about it a lot sooner. So that's just my feeling on the subject. But also, like I said, even if you go into a situation like that with like the best of intentions, as soon as you take one monkey and put a funny hat on him and give him the right to beat and jail another monkey, that monkey's going to be a jerk. It's kind of the same problem that I was talking about, like with the, with the Vanguard Party, and then with groups in general. And I guess, tribalism is a cringy word, but sectarianism, where you become loyal to your people and everybody else becomes an enemy or somebody to exploit. You've got to be very vigilant for that. So I would say if work camps were used, like, it was probably a strategy that was implemented due to desperation and a sheer lack of ideas, and we can stand to build on it, is what I'll say. Not build on the camps themselves, but to build on that strategy.
Just make them a little bit bigger, a little bit. It's cool. It's cool. Like,
make them a little nicer.
Full stop. Not really what we were aiming for there, buddy, but
yeah. And if anybody can find a book, that's great. Okay, well, thank you, by the way. So this is your podcast, technically. So I guess you want to end it, plug your pluggables. You want to have me? How do you want to do this?
I mean, I think the only thing I have to plug is if you guys have a Facebook, you should check out the Food Not Bombs that I have. So Food Not Bombs Yokosuka. Just give that page a like, and just follow us onto their stuff. I think we might have a Twitter. I don't use it. My wife takes care of that shit. But at any rate and stuff, if you hit us up on the Facebook page and stuff, we 110% will answer you guys. And if you guys just want to go talk about that, ask us about that, or just anarchism in general, like movements now or in Tokyo or anywhere, you guys can go, stuff like that too. Yeah, please feel free to.
Absolutely. And anarchists, Marxists, tankies, whatever, you guys are welcome here. Don't excuse genocide, but I don't think I have that problem from my audience. And, the fact is, the main thing that I ask of everybody is make the argument for a better, saner, more compassionate world, and be critical thinkers. That is so key. I can't even. So, don't get sucked into this sect or that sect and start playing that game, because it's a garbage game and we all lose when we do. All right. Well, Chris, I will see you in our forums, in the Communist versus Libertarian debate group, and we'll talk again soon. This was a lot of fun.
Definitely. All right, man. Take care, guys.
Absolutely. Oh, and I did also want to say, somebody on the last thing sent me a $10 super chat, and apparently they were joking with it, because they said that they stole their mom's credit card, but then later said it was a joke. So I really want to thank you. If you guys do want to send me super chats, I'd really appreciate that. Also, if not super chats, donate to my Kickstarter. It's going to be opening up next week. The link is in the chat here at the very top, and the Kickstarter that I'm running for Swaza number 3, like, this doesn't happen without support, and there's a lot of cool revolutionary themes in it, plus feminism and kung fu. All right, I'll catch you guys later. All right,
later.
Signing out.